Morning, everyone. It's nice to see so many early birds. Sorry, just give me 2 seconds. I'm just getting stuff organized in the background here, but I'll just make sure that you have your scoring sheet that you were using yesterday. There should be one last tab that you can rename for this demo. Sorry, Bonita, your mic is live, just in case you were concerned. There.
Sorry,
Uh,
I thought I turned it off.
That's okay, Bonita. It's all good. Morning, everyone. Just make sure that you have your scoring sheet that you were using yesterday. We'll be getting started shortly. I'm just trying to get the last minute stuff going, but don't forget to use your the scoring sheet. You should have another tab that you can rename. After this one, if you can send your scoring sheets to Jane and I right away, that would be great. But you're welcome to review any of the recordings up until today. The recording for today should be compiled and ready probably about 5 to 10 minutes after the meeting is closed, so you'll be able to have access to it right away. The question and answers, I will be sending these off, so hopefully you'll get the rest of the question and answers within the next couple of days from the vendors, depending on how fast they can turn those over. So you'll see an email from me, and I'll post them on this evaluation chat. So still a couple more minutes, so don't worry. Have your coffee ready. It is a bit of a marathon, so take it easy for the next couple of minutes, and we'll get ready. We'll be getting going shortly. Morning, Cliff.
Morning.
We're still a bit early, so don't worry. Your team's coming, I'm sure. We're
Yep.
just getting ourselves going here, so yeah, you have time.
So I thought I'd let you know that we did make the setting change in the sandbox, so work orders will stay in the pending status, and they'll be visible. They're going to be visible on the manager dashboard.
Great. Thank you so much, Cliff, for getting that done so quickly. I appreciate it. Morning,
No
Mel.
problem.
Morning. I hear Cliff giving you an update on the manager approval.
He's right on it. So that's great. Nice to hear. All right. And I saw Matt. Morning, Matt.
Good morning.
We still got a couple more minutes. Just some quick housekeeping for everyone. Just remember to use the Q&A part of this team call for any questions you might have. We'll make time at the end to get through as many questions as we can. Make sure you have your scoring sheet ready and the tab relabeled for today. And we should have recording roughly 10 minutes. The recording should be available about 10 minutes after this call closes. So we still got a couple more minutes. So take your time. It's a bit of a marathon. So you can get your breaks in right now. We'll make sure to get a break sometime during this this demo here. I saw Tom. Morning, Tom. Stuck in there. That's okay.
You might not be connected to audio yet.
Yeah, that's fair. I know I usually open these calls so that everybody can get their audio figured out. So that's all good. Still another minute here, guys. So yep. I'm sure everybody's going to be piling in at the last minute here. Morning, Derek.
Good morning, everybody.
It's another great start of the day, that's for sure. Okay, so we're almost right at time here. But morning, everybody. Just some quick housekeeping. We'll be using the Q&A module in this team meeting. So if you have any questions, by all means, put them in the Q&A section, and we'll get to them at the end of the demo. If we don't get all the questions answered, I will compile them and I'll send them off to the ISS and Nuvolo team, and they can answer them offline and send them back. Also, just to let you know that I'm only using the chat just to be able to provide report functions. Sorry, India, it looks like your mic's live there. Anyways, so I'll be using the chat only to provide the reporting information, but yeah, send everything in your Q&A section. It keeps everything relatively organized. So it's 9:30. I'm going to pass it over to the team here to get started. So, one more last thing before I turn it over. We're going to try to get a break at about 11 o'clock, between 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how we're running on time there. So if we're running early, we can do an earlier break. That's fine, but we'll try to get at least one break in around 11 o'clock. So, all right, that's in for the housekeeping. I'll turn it over to the team. Morning, everyone.
All right. Good morning. Obviously, we got a lot of people on the call. My name is Matt Turkelson. I'm the Senior Account Executive for the opportunity. A few things I want to touch on before I make some introductions or let other people introduce themselves. We'll try to answer some of the Q&A as we go along, just so you know, so we can kind of get some of those knocked out. Another thing that's really important to know, or at least to review from your guys' standpoint, is we are a license-based subscription. That means those people who will actively be working in the system, managers, technicians, not people requesting work. So I want to give you a delineation of kind of where the line is, because a lot of people request work, need something to be fixed. Those are not a license in our system. And again, we know we have a tight time frame. We know you guys are looking at other folks. We're going to do our best to answer everything timely. I know we got to get over our proposal to you by December 20th, which should be more than enough time. But again, anything that you have, put it in the chat. If we don't get to it, of course, by the end of the day or end of the call, we will definitely be able to answer them, respond to you, and get them over to you in a very timely fashion. Obviously, in the United States, right now, everybody is racing to get out of the week because of Thanksgiving. And apparently today is the day for me that everybody wants to have a meeting. So I've been on meetings all day. So that being said, Matt Turkelson here. I will chime in periodically if anybody does have questions. I want to go ahead. Then I want to move to you, Mel, and your team. And then Mel, if you could pass it to Derek right before he takes over for the demo, I think we can get moving that way.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. So my name is Mel Furman. I am a program director with ISS Solutions, and we are the Nuvolo partner that is involved in the opportunity as well. And I've got a couple of my colleagues on the line with us. Cliff Rao is on the line, and also Tom Bukowski are both members of my team and long-term employees with ISS Solutions. So we had a little bit of interaction with some of the team on the sandbox training yesterday, but I see there's a lot more people on this call. So if we haven't met you before, hello, nice to meet everyone. And we will also help answer any questions that we can as we go through the demo. And as Matt said, please use the Q&A, and we'll be monitoring that throughout. So if you have a question, just pop it in there and we'll try to get you an answer super fast.
Excellent, excellent. All right, Derek, I'm going to leave you for last because you're doing the demo. So if you don't mind, if you want to introduce yourself or start your screen and then introduce yourself, and as you know, I'll chime in to help you along the way.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. My name is Derek Nash. I am on Nuvolo Solution Consulting Team, and I'll be the one leading the demonstration today. And whenever Mel and Matt are able to chip in, please feel free to go ahead. And yeah, please feel free to send in any sort of questions you may have into the Q&A. I will probably miss them as I'm going through the demonstration. And so Matt, don't be afraid to chime in whenever there's a question that would make sense to answer on the spot. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen now. And so we are going to start with just a bit of background and kind of general use of Nuvolo and how to navigate the system and the tool. And then we're going to go through all those different scenarios that you presented us with, starting with adding in that new device and being able to have visibility into our whole asset inventory. Then we'll move into the creation of those procedures and the PMs, as well as actually going ahead and completing those work orders along with the different procedures and checklists that may go along with that, as well as tracking any sort of labor and parts. And then we'll move into the actual clinician perspective. So anybody that is requesting work that needs to be done and being able to do that all from a single, pretty easy to use self-service portal. Next, we'll jump into those reporting and dashboards. And so that's actually what we're looking at currently, but we'll spend a bit more time on that later in the demonstration. And then lastly, we are going to finish up with the mobile application for technicians to actually complete their work while they're on the go. All right. So we are starting here at this dashboard that's set up for any sort of HTM manager or supervisor. And again, we're going to touch on the dashboards a bit later. But I do want to point out that it is a user-specific sign-in. So we can see in the top right, we have my name there. So I'm actually signed in right now. Everything in Nuvolo is roles and permissions based. And so everything down to the read and edit level can be configured for each individual field. If certain technicians aren't going to be able to make updates to certain fields, that can be closed off to them. And if you're an admin level, you'll be able to have access to the entire system. And then over here on the left side, right now I do have my favorites pinned. So this navigation bar, this is where I'm able to access a lot of the different modules and parts of Nuvolo. And having our favorites here, it's easy to keep track of any sort of important lists or parts of the application that you're going to be using pretty frequently. And then we can also see this all. And so this actually gives us visibility into all of the different applications. Nuvolo, we are built on the ServiceNow platform. So if you are using that today, you may be somewhat familiar with this. And there is a lot of synergies that do come with being on that platform, some of them being the flexibility of changing any sort of forms, being able to add new fields, as well as any sort of workflows. So something to keep in mind today when we're going through this is that if you see something where you're like, oh, I'd want to change that a little bit, maybe change some of the names, that's all going to be very easy and possible within Nuvolo. And same with those workflows. If you need to have certain approval processes, we can always add those in as a configurable workflow. One other item to point out is that our space hierarchy. So it does start at the highest level, being those different regions, and then that's broken down into the different campuses, and then the individual sites or buildings within those campuses, those the floors that make up the buildings, and then most granular being a single location, which can be either a room or even a desk. There you are able to change this hierarchy as well if you want to rename something, or if you don't want to use certain levels of this hierarchy, that is also possible. All right, so now we are going to jump into our asset inventory. I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to unpin this for now. All right, so now we're looking at a list view into all of the assets in our system. And I want to spend some time here because really there is a lot of power within these list views. If I do want to add in any sort of new devices, we'll go through that in just a moment, but it's pretty simple. All we need to do is select new. And so every single one of these fields we can filter and query on. Let's say we only want to be looking at our infusion pumps. We can go ahead, we can either show matching or even filter that out. So it's kind of like an advanced Excel spreadsheet here. If we want to organize this by manufacturer, we can go ahead and do that. If we want to sort from Z to A, and just as well, we can also group these all together by any of these columns here. We can see our asset tag, our barcode, whether or not it's installed, what our asset type is, manufacturer. So we can go ahead and group that all together by any one of these columns. One thing to point out when it comes to the asset hierarchy, so the largest, it does start at these different asset types. And I'll go ahead and open up the defibrillator. And so we can actually assign certain values and kind of create a template for our different asset types. We can see here, we can set a standard useful life for our asset types, whether or not it's life supporting, if it's going to be included in an AEM schedule, what type of equipment is this? Is this standalone equipment? Is this a system that has other parts or different components? And then down below, we can also see all of the different devices that are actually included in this, as well as being able to associate a risk score for if one of these types of devices go down. And so because this is the highest level in that hierarchy, this will trickle down all the way to the asset level when we are looking at our devices, and it's this type of asset. We can also, when we are setting up our models, so I'm going to go ahead and actually just search for our infusion pumps. When we're looking at our models, we can also do the same thing. Whether we want to add a certain picture of the model to this level, also having a specific manufacturer that's going to be associated to it, what asset type it falls under, if we are keeping track of any sort of ECRI or FDA classifications, any sort of list price that may be assigned to it, as well as being able to understand which of our technicians are actually able to work on this type of device, whether we're keeping track of their skills or certifications. And then down below, again, we can keep track of that end of life, our typical useful life of these types of models, any sort of risks that may be associated with it, as well as PHI, if this certain device is going to have any sort of PHI involved with it. And that will come into play when we are disposing of it, making sure that any sort of PHI is destroyed before we retire our equipment.
Hey, real quick, Derek, obviously the description field's free text.
Oh, yep. So the description fields, there is a lot of flexibility when it comes to that. So we can see here, we can actually look up certain list here. So this is actually a reference list. When we look at our model name, this is a free text field. We can also set up standard formatting. I know there was a question in that RFP demo template to make sure, MAC addresses are always in the same format. So that is all possible within Nuvolo to make sure that there is standard formatting for all of these different fields. And one thing to keep in mind when we're looking at any of the forms that we're looking at today, if you're saying, there's certain information that we keep track of that I'm not seeing on the screen, or, there's too much information here that maybe we're not keeping track of these things today, and, maybe it's something we want to grow into, we can always go ahead and just hide certain forms or certain fields. And then we can always add in other fields as well. That's part of the beauty and the flexibility of this platform. And then just as well, we can see our manufacturer here. If we do want to keep track of our vendors, we can also have important contact information. I'll go ahead and open up this record for us. So if we want to understand, are they a manufacturer? Are they actually a vendor of ours? If they are doing any sort of outside work and they're actually going to be completing work orders, we can also keep track of their different rates that they charge for us. That way we can track that information all back to our assets, as well as any sort of important contact information if we do have a certain representative or anyone particularly that we do reach out to at the organization. All right, so now let's go ahead and actually add in a new piece of equipment here. So the one way to do it is just go in and select new. I can also actually go ahead in my favorites here and add in a new equipment, just select that from right there. And we'll go ahead and just select new. And so we notice this asterisk here. This is actually indicating that it is a mandatory field. We do have the ability to change any of these fields to be mandatory off the bat. So we're automatically collecting that information when we are inputting any sort of new assets into Nuvolo. And so we will go ahead and add in our new demo asset. And then we'll call it 8100 for the new device we're going to be adding. And we can go ahead and add in our asset type. So I'll add in the infusion pumps. And that actually made a few changes on the screen. It's going to be life supporting now. And that's due to the template setup for that infusion pump. We can add in whether or not it's actually operational. It may not be operational yet because we just added it in. Any sort of security status, if there's any sort of known vulnerabilities, as well as our different conditions. How did we actually acquire this? When was this installed? It may not actually be installed yet. We're just adding this into the system. And then down below, we have all these different tabs for additional information here. And so we'll first add in our manufacturer, so our CareFusion Alaris. And again, we can actually, it's tied directly to that company. So if there is any sort of contact information there that we want to have access to, and then we'll add in our model name. So our Alaris 8100 infusion pump. And again, some of that information on this is tied back to this asset based on the information. So we're going to have our list price, whether or not this can be included in an AEM, what is our asset type here. And then we can also keep track of any sort of warranty information, and I'll touch on the actual contracts and being able to manage the different devices and our contracts a bit later on. And then in our resources, typically these fields are actually used for some of the automated routing rules. So if it's supported by a single technician or a group of technicians, we can go ahead and include that here. And that way, anytime a work order is generated against this, we can have one of those automated assignment rules that it will automatically send those work orders to the correct group or even the individual technician that's responsible. We can also set up any sort of relationships. If there is a specific type of part that is a part of this this asset and being able to keep track of that, as well as if it is part of a larger system, we'll take a look at a more built out device right after this as well. And then in our financial information, if we do have our list price pulling from the asset model, we can also include what it actually costed us. When we're looking at this later, we'll actually see that this information is being pulled as the work orders get completed against this asset. And then I'm going to skip over to this technical information. So here's where we can keep track of, okay, what is our MAC address for this particular device? And again, this can be a formatted field, so that way it's not going to be entered incorrectly. And if we do put in something that is in an incorrect format, it won't actually let us do that, as well as any sort of IP address. And then if there is a specific OS or software running on this device, we can also include that here in our security information. And then going over here, so also if there's an owning department or even being able to add in our last known location of this, if we want, if it's a stationary device and it's always going to be in one spot, we can include that now. And then I'll show a little bit later on how we can update our assets in bulk to a new location. And then just as well, any of our disposal details. So I'm going to go ahead and save this asset record. And we notice this this firmware is not up to date. We can have notifications pop up for really any event in the system. If it needs to be onboarded properly and it hasn't gone through that process yet, we can also create notifications for that. And now we can see there is actually a workflow here. Whenever a new device is onboarded, that it's going to create this work order for an asset onboarding. We can have this assigned to a group here if we'd like, or even a technician. And then adding in any sort of attachments is real simple. So attachments can be added to any record within the system or tool. And I can go ahead and choose a file here if I do want to open up. We'll open up this purchase order, so I can go ahead and add that directly to the asset level. All right. And we can see here now it is attached. If I do want to start managing these, I can go ahead and add in a new file as well. If we do want to fill in our software bill of materials, I can go ahead and include that as well.
Hey, Derek, let's touch on a couple things real quick. One, if they try to type in an incorrect format for the MAC address, it just, what does it give them an error? What's the way they're notified, for one? And then again, I think specifically to most fields, most of them are free text. Will you point out which ones are not if it's not a drop-down list? They can be both, obviously, but can you speak to the fields and free versus drop-down and what kind of flexibility you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me start from the top here. So our asset tag, this is going to be a free text type of field, as well as the barcode. Serial number, this is out of the box of free text field. However, some of our customers do have a standard formatting for that. And so if you were to input something that is in the incorrect format, it's just going to show up kind of like just an error. It'll have it highlighted, and then it won't let you save because it's in that incorrect format. So it's going to give you that notification saying, hey, this is not in the correct format, and it will not let you save and go further. And the same way with the MAC address, if we did want to make this a formatted field, it would have to be in the correct format that you set it up for. And if you input that incorrectly, it's not going to let you save it. And then, so we can see we have some drop downs here. We also have the options to do these little cards where we can move this from in stock to installed, dispose of this, pending verification. Our operational status, this is a drop down of different options. We see 3 different options here, but if we did want to add in another operational status, we can do that. And the same thing for any of these drop downs. That would just be a matter of adding that in. It's very similar to a reference field, which we can see here, like our asset type. This is a reference field. So I can go ahead, if I got rid of this infusion pump, I could actually search. And now I have a list view into all of my different asset types. We can see about 10,000 of them down below. And I can actually search and for specific types of assets, or if it's a certain category or subcategory, or even our identifier class here. And again, so anything with these little magnifying glass, this is going to be a reference field. And those are always really nice because it doesn't take much maintenance. And it's typically being updated all the time by whether it's technicians or managers. And it won't let you spell anything wrong. So if I just go in and say some nonsense here and I try to save that, it's going to let me know that's an invalid reference. And so it actually did reset it back to the original. And then we can see here whether or not there's we can also have check marks for anything. This can help out when it comes to flagging if it is a critical piece of equipment. And again, that's going to relate back to your work orders. For anything that is critical, it might be assigned a higher priority. All right. Any other questions there? And then I'll jump into a more built out device so we can see some more details and information there.
Yeah, one quick one, and I think this is quick. Obviously, be able to do the global search for anything that's in an attachment. We can't search through an attachment to find information, correct?
So the information that's in an attachment, no, we're not going to be able to search for the actual information in that because it is in that attachment. But we will be able to search globally for the attachment. Anything else there?
Nope, let's keep moving.
All right. So let's go into this other device we have set up here with a bit more of the information built out already. And again, so we have those same fields and pieces of information here. And then we can also keep track of when was this actually last maintained, when was this installed. The same information here. And again, those relationships, so understanding where is this located, any other parts that are involved, if this is part of a larger system as well. And moving into that financials tab, we can see here our total labors cost, even our service contract cost here, which helps us understand our total cost of ownership, and really helping us make some of those repair versus replace decisions. And then also being able to report on this end of life. And then being able to see the PO number as well if we are connecting this to an external source. Nuvolo does have a modern API, so we are able to integrate with most other modern systems, especially ERP tools, which is a very common integration that we do see with a lot of our customers today. And then going through, we can also keep track of performance, so any sort of planned or unplanned downtime. and being able to keep track of that and also report on that. One thing to note is that every single field that we have in Nuvolo is able to be reported on. So we can get very granular with reporting, and we will see that a bit later in the demonstration, as well as any sort of loaner or replacement items here, what our risk is. So is this a life-saving piece of equipment? How often does this go down? What's the probability of this actually going down? So we can also keep tabs on that. And then again, having that technical information. And then when we do go to dispose of this, so what is our disposal method? Did we donate this, salvage this? Is it sold? And again, if you do have other ways of disposing of this, we would be able to add that to this list, being able to provide a reason. This is an open text field. Where was this actually disposed of? When was this decommissioned? Any sort of values that we may want to report on. It may even be for accounting reasons. And if there is PHI stored, we have to keep track of, okay, who was this actually destroyed by? Being able to do that for regulatory and compliance reasons, and actually being able to show that, hey, this was disposed of properly and we did destroy any sort of personal health information. And down below, as we start creating work orders against this asset and completing them, we will also be able to have visibility into the complete maintenance history of this particular asset, as well as what are the scheduled maintenances that are a part of this asset. And the last thing I want to jump into is being able to associate this to a specific contract. And we can see here we have this GE Healthcare contract that's active right now. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And before I do that, are there any other questions on the actual asset record? All right.
I don't think I'm seeing anything on that one, but.
All right. All right, so here we do have native contract management within Nuvolo. So we can see here, we can keep track of who our vendor is, and again, being able to have that information directly associated to it, any sort of contact information, and also what type of contract is this? That way we can be flagged beforehand. Is it a service contract? Is it a maintenance contract? Any sort of warranties can also be tracked within Nuvolo. And then here we have our cost, when's our start and end date, also being able to check off whether or not it's renewable or extendable. And we can receive email notifications based on whether or not we are able to renew this. So if we do want to set up a notification just saying, hey, 6 months before the end of every contract, we want to be notified that this is able to be renewed. And then again, being able to pull in from other sources if you are managing your contracts in a different tool today, or if they're in your ERP system, being able to associate those together. And then any sort of details here. So if there is any sort of SLAs, what's our service level? Is it 24/7? Is it just during working hours? As well as any sort of cap, whether we want to do this by an actual dollar amount or if we have a percentage that it's actually going to be covered for. And then based on all of the different work orders that have come in, we can see some of those costs here that are associated to these work orders. That's how we're understanding our contract value and being able to report on the ROI for these contracts, making us helping us make some of those decisions around, okay, is this contract actually worth it? Do we think we could go out and find a different vendor, or is this something that we could even start doing in-house? And then so we also have visibility into all of our different covered assets. And anytime a work order is generated against one of these assets, it's going to flag it as saying, hey, this is a work order under contract. It's something that we can actually just reach out to the vendor to do. We are not responsible for it ourselves. And then we can see here with our actual coverage, I'll open this up for a moment. We can see this is We can have it related to all of the different work orders, as well as being able to restrict it just to specific types of work that is going to be done on these assets, as well as being able to understand what is the actual coverage for this, for both parts and labor. All right. Any other questions there? And then I'm going to go back into our asset inventory and show us how we can make updates in bulk, as well as upload bulk items.
Yeah, one real quick here. I mean, the answer I know is no, but I want you to explain it. Does the system have any mechanisms to identify inconsistencies? Like if I put in something that's I put in $1,000, but it's supposed to be $10,000. Is there any way that you can put ranges in, unless you set it up particularly on every asset?
So that is tricky because you can set up not to exceed values that are going to flag it. However, it's really the granularity of how you want to have that set up, because you could do that essentially at the contract level. Like if we don't want to have contracts over $100,000 in the tool, and anytime you put something in that's over that value, it'll say, hey, this is exceeding our contract value. The same goes for any sort of work orders. So if there is, we can see here, this is a pretty hefty materials cost. Maybe we're getting a new coil or something. So we can also include not to exceed values on the work order. It kind of depends on how you want to set that up. But if we were just inputting, let's say, we'll go through this a bit later, but if we were inputting our labor cost or materials cost and it was, just slightly off, that's very difficult to keep track of.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, again, you'd have to do it every time, and that's some of that comes with obviously limiting everybody from doing everything, right? Give everybody certain roles. You try to limit the amount of people who are making input so they have the proper training and to do that. But I just wanted to make sure you pointed that out real quick. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Derek, there's a few questions in the Q&A. I don't know if you want to address them now or if you want to go.
Well, I've been answering them kind of
later
as we've gone away. I've been answering a lot of them as we've gone through. Is there any ones in particular that somebody has that's of high importance? Because I've been hitting a lot of them.
There's one, Matt, this is Mel. There's one right at the beginning of the Q&A that didn't get answered. I was kind of leaving that for you guys to address about the location hierarchy.
Yeah, I put a thumbs up. So your location hierarchy is your location hierarchy, right? You'll work with the workflow with Mel and their team to figure out what your hierarchy is, and then that will be consistent, obviously, throughout the system.
Oh, and I just saw one. Is there an audit trail for the asset record? And
yeah, I think I answered that, but if you want to demo that or show them that on the screen, that might be helpful.
All right, so I'll quickly go through that. So if we want to quickly look into the history of this, and I hope this is set up correctly for now. So we can see actually the change history and any sort of updates that have been made over time to each and every one of the fields. We can also go ahead and view this on a calendar view. So we can see here any sort of changes that have been made over time on a calendar view. Right now, this is only looking at one particular month. Most of the changes have been today. But yes, there is a complete audit history on an asset record, and that can also be included in the activity stream, which I will pull up in just a second.
And so why are you doing that?
Configuration to keep track of all these different changes. But yes. So
while you're doing that, so in the chat, if I put a thumbs up, that means we can do it, right? So I don't think everyone needs to be a written out response. If we say yes, thumbs up, that means like, can we add or remove tabs to the subforms? Yes, we can make them, rename them. They're your work tabs. So again, if you see a thumbs up, that means we can do it. If you want to talk about it more specifically, then feel free to come off of mute and maybe ask it a little bit differently.
All right. And yeah, the questions are tough for myself to keep track of. So yeah, Matt and Melvin doing a great job keeping track of that so far. Yeah, just jump in whenever you seem like it feels like it makes sense for me to answer it live here.
Okay.
All right. So now we're going to go back into the devices list. And let's take a look at, let's say we only want to look at our different infusion pumps. And by including, just as a little tip for Nuvolo, this asterisk makes it kind of a wild card search here. So it's just going to look for anything that includes infusion. And let's say we only want to look at these Plum A infusions. So we're going to go ahead and just show matching here. And there's still actually quite a few. And so we can also favorite any of these lists. We can see this filter here. So if I have a specific filtered list that I always want to return to or look back at, we do have the ability to do that. And so we'll just look at these other ones. All right, and let's say we are going to update all of these to the same location. To do that, I'm going to right click on this last known location, and it's actually going to give me the ability to update all of these. I can also, if I do just want to update one of them, I can go ahead and just put in the information there. I can search through all of my locations, or if I do already know it, it is a smart search, so it'll include everything that I'm typing in. And then I can also do this in bulk. So let's say I want to grab a couple of these and put them all in the same location. I can go ahead and you can see all 5 of those rows will be updated. But let's go ahead and actually go into updating all of them. So it's going to ask us update the entire list. Yep, I'm going to want to update all 79 of them. And so here, it's actually giving us the ability to not only update that last known location, but update any of the fields, and this will update all of those in that list. But for our example, we'll go ahead and add that to a new location here. And I'm just going to select that location, and then we can go ahead and update that. And this is tying back to the space information within Nuvolo, and it's 79 different records, so it may just take a moment for it to update all of them. But pretty quickly, we can see all of them are now located at this last known location. One other item that I did not mention yet about these list views. So we're looking at asset tag, barcode, install status, some basic information here, but we have the ability to actually pull in any of the fields within this asset. So if I want to go ahead and personalize this list, I also want to see, let's say, the acquisition cost, or if we have a specific owning department that we want to pull in. We can see here there's tons of different fields that's being kept track of. So we can say it's owned by. And yeah, we'll just add those in for now. We can also get rid of any of these columns as well. So there's really there's a ton of flexibility right from this list view. And so going even a step further, if we want to make a report directly from a list view, I would just want to right click on the column that I want to report on. And right from here, I can create a bar chart or a pie chart. And that would launch us into the reporting engine, which we will get to a bit later in the conversation. And when it comes to uploading information all at once, let's say we have a group of assets, we just want to be able to quickly get all of them into Nuvolo without having to add in a new one every time. One way, so I'm just going to open up this as an example. We can also clone our different assets, and there it's going to copy all the information from this asset, besides the work order history and those financials. But then we're just going to have to provide a new asset tag for that. So that's one way we can just kind of keep cloning devices, but then we can also bulk update these or bulk import these. So I can right click anywhere on this top column and I can go ahead and import. And so it actually will prompt us insert new records or update existing records. So not only can you import information, but you can also update information that's already current if you have some additional information that's in a spreadsheet and you just want to be able to add that to a specific asset. And it'll even give us some more info if we want some, just a little bit more background in terms of, how to do this process. And so we can choose whether or not we are inserting this or updating this. And do we want to actually create an Excel template to enter the data? And that will help us when it comes to putting the information in the right spot and being able to correctly associate the different fields from the Excel sheet to Nuvolo. And so first we can actually create that Excel template. And so what it's doing is it's just getting all of those different fields like the asset tag, what the operating software is, and putting that into a digestible form for Nuvolo. And I can go ahead and download that. Once you do this once, this template, it will always work for you. And I can go ahead and open that up. That did open in a new screen for me. And I'll go ahead. And so can everybody see the Excel sheet?
Looks good, Derek.
All right. And so here we can actually see all of those different fields. And you by no means have to upload all of the information here. And we even do get some nice directions when it comes to this. So being able to save the Excel spreadsheet, making sure the columns are matching up. Each of the rows corresponds to a different record in the table. So it's each row is actually creating a new record in Nuvolo. So there is some additional directions right from that export for people that, it might be their first time, and it just helps to quickly kind of walk through this. And even some helpful tips when it comes to copying and pasting if you are coming from a different source. And then as a technician or a supervisor, when I have that list here, again, we don't need to include all of these different bits of information. It does come in alphabetical order. For the most part, when it comes to putting these in, just helping us kind of organize. And then so we would just provide this information here. And then we would go ahead and be able to choose our file. And then we can finally upload that. Now, I won't walk through that particular process here, but yes, so we do have the ability to update or upload the assets in bulk. Matt or Mel, is there any questions that should be addressed here?
I think we're hitting them as we go along. One of the big things that's come up multiple times is obviously roles and responsibilities, limiting just anybody from making certain changes. Obviously, we can help set up roles and put people in those roles. And I think that's up to you guys to define what those roles are and then what level of access they get. But you have the ability to do that throughout the system.
Yep.
So I was wondering about writing information to assets from an external source like Medigate, for example.
From Medigate.
Yeah, so that'd be an integration, right? So yeah, we can do that. That's an OT security integration, a different solution that's on top of HTM. But yes, we can almost get any information from there and put into ours if you, I said, with an API integration.
Yep, thank you.
All right. So let's jump into the next portion of the demo. So the actual creation of procedures and being able to have those PMs set up on a recurring schedule. All right. So PMs are created in Nuvolo in what we call our scheduled maintenance definitions. And so there's quite a bit of information here. So we're going to walk through this together. And so we are currently looking at a annual PM for a ventilator. And so first, we're actually deciding, is this going to apply to an asset or to a location? So some folks do location-based PMs, and that can be related to rounds or inspections. And so we do have the ability to both include spaces or actual assets. And so next, we're actually going to set the parameters for what assets is this going to apply to. And we can actually see here which assets it will apply to. I can see if I click into this, I can actually see which 2 assets it'll apply to in a different tab. And then down below, here's where we can start putting in what is the actual schedule and the different checklists that are going to be associated to this. And when I say checklists, that is those procedures and the steps, making sure that the technicians are following the proper procedure when they're going out and completing this checklist. And so first we have this, what is the actual work order type that's going to be generated? Or actually, sorry. First we have our trigger type. So we have the ability to do calendar, floating, or utilization-based PMs. And then we have our schedule here. So whether this is going to be daily, weekly, monthly, annually, biannually, there is a lot of flexibility when it comes to establishing that schedule. And next we have our work order type. One of the nice things about Nuvolo is that when you have scheduled maintenance, it doesn't necessarily need to be creating a PM. You do have the ability to create any sort of work orders from the work order creator. So if we have certain inspections or any other type of work order that we want to just have generating on a regular set schedule, we can go ahead and include that. And then our generation type is going to be recurring. So that way it's kind of that set it and forget it schedule. You know, these are going to be something that you load into Nuvolo, and hopefully you really won't have to touch this too much after they're already in there, unless you're making an update to maybe the set of procedures or any other like the start time of these procedures. So there's a couple different options when it comes to adding in checklists. So we have these pre and working checklists here. If there's just one of each, you know, this is an easy way to just go ahead and I can look up my checklists and add them in. Or down below, we can also see our different checklists here. So we can see there's 2 different checklists for this. And part of the reason for that is, if I scroll back up here, we have both an annual and a biannual PM schedule for these 2 different ventilators. And so anytime that this is going to be created, it's going to suppress that other biannual, the one that's happening every 2 years. And the checklist from that is just going to be included in this. So that's the way to nest our different PMs. It's going to suppress this particular PM and just add the checklist or procedures to this PM schedule. And we can see here we have our working. We can also, because it's active, I can't actually make any updates on it. That's one of those security preventions to make sure people aren't just making changes all the time. So if it's active, I can't make any sort of changes. But I would also be able to make this a pre-checklist, which just means it's the work that is going to get done before I actually start completing this. And we'll take a look at the actual checklist items in just a moment. And then again, so we have our start date. If we do want to have any sort of lead time for this, that just means it'll be generated 3 days before the actual start date. And this can be helpful when it comes to resource allocation and being able to understand what you do have in your upcoming PMs. Our grace period is going to be our due date. So if we were to have a grace period of 30 days, it would be due 30 days after our start date. And again, this is for compliance reasons, being able to report on those specific PMs that need to be done by a certain time period. And then again, we have our maintenance source, whether or not it's coming from our manufacturer or an AEM procedure, being able to understand what our maintenance is per year. We have our work order summary. This can help out when we are assigning work, or even for just being able to report on our work orders if we want to report specifically on a work order summary. We can also include an estimated effort. And again, that's for that resource allocation, being able to understand, okay, I have 80 PMs and it's going to take about 160 hours for next month. Let's, excuse me, let's see how we can work that into our technician schedules, which will also provide us with that estimated cost here. When these work orders are generated, they can also be automatically assigned out to whether it be a specific group or even an individual technician. And down below, we can also have associated parts to our PMs. That way we know whenever this PM kicks off and there is a part associated to it, as a technician, I'll be aware of it. And so I'll be able to have all the parts that I need to actually complete that job before I head out to it. And it's also, we'll take a look at some of the reporting later, but also being able to plan for those parts and being able to see your PM schedule and any sort of parts you may need in the future. And just as well, we have our different skills. So if there are certain mechanical or certifications and just different skills that your technicians need to have in order to complete this, we do have that ability as well. And these can be loaded into Nuvolo in bulk in the same way that an asset can. It's really just a same type of template and being able to match up the fields and import that into Nuvolo. And we'll jump into this next, and I'm not going to save those changes right now. I realize, are you folks looking at yourself over here? I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. All right. And then, so now we have this biannual PM. And here, I won't go through the same things, but I will jump into the actual checklist for this. And we can see that this one is actually not active at the moment. But again, we can see that this is being suppressed by that other PM. So that way we don't have multiple work orders. We can just have the one work order generated with both of the procedures on it.
Yeah, so that was that was a question, and obviously PMs come up with a lot of these, right? So the suppression means, hey, I don't want to have a weekly, a daily, and a monthly all come up on the same one and print out 4 of them. I'd rather have us print off 1. We don't, so we're trying to save the number of PMs that are generated by having it nested. And so that's the purpose of that. It's not any more complicated. It just keeps you from having a weekly or a bi-weekly or monthly all on the same day because they all come due at the same time.
Yep, exactly. It's really saving our technicians a lot of time in terms of not having to close out 4 different work orders. It can also help out with reporting in terms of just if a technician was to kind of forget and then it looks like, oh, okay, this PM failed because it was past due. So it's just a consolidation of the actual work orders and the procedures themselves.
Okay, I'm just trying to get my head around this. So you have 2, you basically have a stacked PM. You do a set of checklists annually, and then maybe every other year you do some extra steps, right? Maybe it's replace the battery.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so what you're saying is you have to create an annual PM, but you suppress it on the second year. Like it just seems very complex and very hard to get your head around how you're setting up that schedule. And maybe I'm misunderstanding it.
No. So it's I think it's more simple than you think. It really, so what it's looking at is we had our annual PM that applied to these 2 different assets. And then we also have this biannual PM that applies to these two different assets. And so instead of, and so when it comes to the annual one, every 2 years, instead of just having the procedure for the annual procedure, it's going to include the procedures for this every 2-year PM as well. And that way, when that's kicked off, this PM will not be generated here.
Got it. I just think it seems like a complex way of doing it. Why not just be able to set your schedules?
Well, you could if you want to print out 2 or 3 or 4 of them on those days, you can. The purpose of that is to not do that, right? But if you want to keep them separate and have your every one come out and have 5,
no, you don't. But you just say, okay. It just seems like a complex way of telling the system not to do that. That's all. Okay, I got it now.
So can I suggest a different explanation or a way that you might be able to explain it to us? With the dialysis RO systems, we might have a weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual PM. So how would those look?
Yep, so those would be, if you had a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual, you're going to have those 4 different schedules within Nuvolo. When, once a year, it's going to have all 4 of those that want to kick off, but 3 of them, you don't actually need to have a work order created. It's just going to pull those 3 sets of procedures onto that one work order for one of those schedules, or for all 4 of those schedules. But instead of having 4 different work orders, it's just going to be on that one work order with all those procedures. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the other aspect of that is, though, that you may want to do something different. And I'm wondering about the flexibility. Like, you might want to do the weekly all the time. You might want to have a separate weekly PM work order, even though you just did an annual, because it's doing something different.
Yeah, I think that's where the issue is. So you are still doing the weekly, and it is still going to say you did the weekly, but it's going to put that information into just the one work order. It's not going to say you're not going to do it. It's going to say you're going to do it, but you're going to do it on the one work order that goes with it. Now, if you want to keep them separate, you surely can.
And that weekly one is going to continue to kick off every week.
Yeah.
I was going to say, once in a while, all of them will be aligned, and instead of multiple work orders, you're just getting one, but all the procedures are loaded into one.
That is correct.
Yeah, I get it. Thanks, guys.
All right. How are we doing on time? 1:30? Oh, we're good. All right. So now let's take a look into the actual checklist and our procedures and the different options that we have when setting these up. And so I'm actually going to go into our new checklist UI. This is some new functionality within Nuvolo. We can see some bare minimum information here in terms of, so our checklist details. These are actually the different questions. As of right now, we only have one question on this checklist. Let's go ahead and go into that. These checklist questions can also be imported in bulk if you do already have them written out with the different questions and answers. And so here we can see we have our one question, but we want to add in a new question. And so whether we want to add in an existing question that's already in the system, that way we don't need to create a new one. But let's say we want to get a meter reading on this.
I think an obvious question that's going to come up here too is, hey, what if we already have checklists? Can we download them, upload them? Can we get them in the system if we already got them made?
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, these are able to be bulk imported as well. The same way with any of the information in Nuvolo. So you like your devices going through that step, it's going to be very much the same for importing your checklist questions and procedures as well. And so, but if we are creating new ones within the tool, just to go through some of the different types of questions that actually can be included. And again, this would be in that template when you are importing them, if you were going to import them in bulk. We have a number of different options when it comes to the type of question. So whether or not we want to have, this is a specific type of automated safety test. We can also have a custom choice for multiple input and a custom choice for a single input. So that's kind of just like a free text line. Or if we want to have designated options that are custom to this question, we can have a date or a date and time input. We have our free text option, any sort of numerical option. We can get really granular with the numerical if you want to include it all the way to a certain decimal point. So if we need to have 3 digits past the decimal point or 7 digits past the decimal point, we can also include those parameters. Whether or not it is going to be pass, fail, or NA, a range of different options. So if it needs to be within a specific range, and let's say if it was outside that range, we would actually go ahead and create a corrective action for this. So if this is outside of the range that we set up for this, it is going to create an automatic corrective work order based on the answer to this question. We can also see we can have default answers, and this applies to every single answer type. And I'll go ahead, I'll add in a new question. But the default answers can make it really nice for the technician, because if they're going in and let's say they're just going through pass-fail types of questions, we can have a default set up to be pass. So that way they don't actually have to actively go in and click pass for all the different sets of procedures or steps that they're following. It's just going to be, a question could even be a direction, and it's just going to be a pass. And that way the expected answer is also pass. And that way they just don't need to do that extra click. And going through, so the other types of questions is setting the system value, and as well as yes, no, or yes, no, NA, or even reference. So this can be really helpful for inputting certain information if we are using a table that's already in Nuvolo. That way there can't be any sort of spelling mistakes. They're going to have that reference list for them. And again, that's something that doesn't need to be maintained typically, because it's kind of automatically being maintained, your different lists. But let's do our set system value. So we can choose our clinical work orders. And so we can choose any of the fields in the system. So let's say we have an asset, we want to update what the acquisition cost, or we just want to confirm certain pieces of information, like is this the actual last known location of it? And it'll actually, once we input that, it's going to update that asset to say, okay, no, this is the new location of this asset. So we are able to put in certain values on our assets right from our work orders and our procedures. All right. We can also have dependencies. That's fine. Based on our different answers. Continue. Oh, we need more than one question here, and I didn't save any of them. But so if, let's say this does fail, was the battery changed? We'll have our default answer pass, expected answer pass. We'll have corrective action. Go ahead and save that. And we can add in a dependency. So which of our questions, if the answer was a fail for this, we can have more questions pop up on that checklist, so they can actually be dynamic in that sense, where if you have certain types of answers, it can lead to different questions on that checklist or a different set of procedures on that checklist. So there's a lot of flexibility in the dynamic checklists. And we can also get a quick preview of that if we want to see just how is this actually going to look for our technicians here. All right. Were there any other questions in the chat there on the setting up of procedures or checklists?
Just some questions.
I don't think obviously for the uploading, you know, I think somebody had how do we get them uploaded? Same thing with your device. I think the text should be fine. Again, there's a procedure that Mel and his team will work with to get them up out of your current system. As long as you can get them out of the current system, we can get them inputted in our system.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And that is something that's typically done during the implementation process.
Yeah, I would just say that some formats are easier to work with than others. It's just some of the others you got to put a little more time into manipulating the data to prepare it for upload. So like one example is like a PDF. Sometimes it's doable. It just takes a little more work to get the data prepped to be uploaded.
Yep, that's a good call out there. All right. So now let's jump into actually completing one of these PMs. And I'm going to go through to my favorites. And I've got this PM set up for us. And so this is actually one of the PM examples that we walked through earlier. It's for that new ventilator, the PB980. And we can see here on our work order that this is a work in progress. Because it's already been assigned out, we can see it also has an assignment group. And again, when we're looking at these forms, if you're thinking, you know, this is something that there's a lot of information here, perhaps we're not keeping track of all these different types of items today, very easy to go ahead and get rid of any of these fields and just go ahead and hide them. And we can always add in additional fields as well. And so we can see up at the top what state this work order is in. Has it been assigned? Has the technician actually started working on this? We can also put this on hold, holding any sort of SLAs and pausing those, as well as our priority here. Priority may be assigned automatically based on the actual asset that it is associated to. So if it's critical or a life safety piece of equipment, it may be automatically assigned to a higher priority, as well as the actual location of it, and even being able to see this on a floor plan. And then we can even include a substate here. We can see our service provider. So if this was an asset that's under a contract, this would be flagged. I'd be able to have that pop-up notification up at the top like we saw earlier, just letting me know that this is something that's under contract, you know, something that we might be able to get repaired or replaced at no cost to us because we already have it included. Also being able to include any sort of cost center source, whether it's going to be, you know, based on the asset, based on the assignment group, based on whoever requested this. This is a PM, our order summary here, and our details. So being able to include any sort of notes, as well as additional comments. If this was a corrective work order, I'd be able to go in and add comments here where the clinician or the person that actually submitted this request would be able to see. We'll take a look from the end user perspective in just a bit. And really the process for PMs and corrective work is going to be the same or very similar in Nuvolo. The only difference may be those working checklists. If you do have different processes or procedures based on the type of work order, we can also absolutely add that in as a workflow. And so let's go ahead and we're going to complete our working checklist first. So as a technician, and this is something that probably will be done on the mobile app. So we'll get to that at the end of the demonstration. And we can see here our working checklist. So whether or not this is passed, I can go ahead, and this was already set up as a defaulted pass. And then I can also add in any sort of comments or even a file if I did want to upload a picture directly to not only this work order, but directly to this particular question, or even add a comment to this question. And then we can see our different steps here. So check for any sort of damage, make sure all the connectors are intact, confirm the integrity of it, verify the cables, check for any cracks, as well as follow the diagnostic checks from our manufacturer. And we can go ahead and keep these, and we have those defaulted answers set up. So I, as a technician, don't actually need to go in and click yes for everything, and just making it a bit more tedious. And then I can go ahead and select all and submit this. First, go ahead and save, and then submit that. And so we can see now our checklist was completed successfully. Oh, and one other thing that I should have done before doing that submission is because it's a web page, you do still have the ability to print it out. It's going to look pretty much the exact same as you see on that web page. It would just have everything listed out. If it's multiple pages, that's fine, but you do have the ability to print it out. We do typically recommend completing it on the mobile app or on the desktop rather than printing them out, but you do have that option if you'd like to. All right. I can go ahead and close this now. And when I refresh this, that button for our working checklist is now gone because it has been completed. And we can see down below our verification data. So we can actually report on all of our different checklist items as well. And we can see the value there and who it was actually completed by. And then when I go to complete this, so if I try to just put this right into a work complete, it knows that I have not added any sort of itemized costs yet. So it's going to automatically prompt me saying, okay, if you're actually complete, then you need to add in your labor time. And so we can see here, what type are we adding? So first, I'll do some labor hours, and I'll go ahead and say this took me 2 hours. And just by clicking this little clock, it's going to set up my time for me there. We can also associate this to a specific cost type, whether or not this is in-house or contract cost or a vendor that's completing this. And then we can go ahead and save that. And so our labor hours are $100 an hour. So it's going to include that amount there. And we can go ahead and add more. Let's now do a parts example. We'll do both a inventoried part and a non-inventoried part. So we can see here that little check mark. So what part are we actually selecting? I can go ahead and search for any of these. We'll just use this lock nut as an example. And then what bin is this actually located in? And it's just going to pick out where the locations of the lock nuts are. So I don't actually have to search through a bunch of different things. It's just going to associate the two together. And we'll just use a quantity of 2 here. And we can actually choose to auto-calculate this or input our own amount here. And I'll save that. And now we can see our 2 different itemized costs. And let's say we want to add in one more. And this will be for a part that is not an inventory part. So we're just going to include our part descriptions, our sample part here. What's our price per unit? Let's say, well, this was about $450 and we needed one of them. And again, we can auto calculate that or just automatically put that amount in there. And I'll save that. And now we can see our 3 different itemized costs. And I'll go ahead and exit out of this. And when we go ahead and refresh this again, we see those 3 itemized costs as well down below. We do also have the ability to keep track of any sort of SLAs on this work order. So whether it's based on the priority of it, and we are keeping track of when we either respond to it or resolve this. We can also manage SLAs within Nuvolo. And so again, I'm going to move this into work complete because it wouldn't let me before because I didn't have those itemized costs added yet. And our resolution here, so the labor added is automatically switched to present because of the labor I added into those costs. Our problem cause, some folks do use this as, fault code or other types of information. We can see this is a reference list. So we can use improper use, our resolution code, just to open that up and show you folks. And we can always add in different resolution codes. We'll select our on-site service. And then our resolution detail, battery has been changed. And then within our details, we can always add in any other additional notes. I can add myself to a watch list if I want to keep track and be updated or notified of any of the comments that are coming in, as well as our schedule here for keeping track of the scheduled start date, any sort of due date, the planned start, the planned end, when our estimated effort here, when our downtime started, when our downtime ended, being able to report that back to the asset. And so now, since I have all those resolution details in there, I can also add in some symptoms. Now I'll go ahead and save this. And so if you do have a review process, or if you want to have it go through any sort of approval workflow, you do have the ability to do that. And I'm just going to force this through to be a close complete. But so once I refresh this, it's going to lock everything down for me as a technician, so I can't make any more updates to this. All right. So we just walked through the desktop version of a technician being able to complete their work, as well as go through any of those procedures or checklists from that. And so as a technician, I can also have a dashboard set up for myself. That way I can keep track of any of the work that's incoming. So as a technician, whenever something is assigned to me, I'm going to be able to view that on my dashboard. And all of these are dynamic. So I can actually select into this if I want to see my asset onboarding work orders, if I want to click into my priority or high priority work orders as well. And then being able to see my compliance status for the month. This is just for the last 7 days. But we can also update this if I do want to look at it for last month or the year to date. I can go ahead and apply that. We can see here we have a few different changes up on the screen. And again, this is all dynamic, so I can actually make updates to my work orders as well. Over here as a technician, I can see all of the different work orders, whether they're assigned to myself or any sort of unassigned tasks, as well as getting a complete view into my asset inventory. And it's nice for technicians just because everything's in one place. If I do need to access something quickly, I have the ability to do that, and it'll actually open out into different tabs here. I can see all of my different asset types here, all of my different parts as well. Even just having really everything kind of right here for me, so I don't need to do a lot of navigating around as a clinician. The only difference is that it does get rid of some of the functionality when it comes to searching for everything from this particular view, but they will still always have access to those other list views as well. This is just kind of a nice consolidated version of it, right in a single dashboard for them.
And I'm sure you're going to talk about this too, probably a little later, but yeah, each individual technician can have a dashboard for themselves. Obviously, consistency for you guys is what you're wanting for. Supervisors can have their dashboard. Managers above them can have their dashboard. So dashboards can be unique to the individual.
Yep. Yeah. I'll get into the actual the different dashboards and how they can be shared a bit later in the demonstration. But next, I was going to jump into being able to
Hey, real quick
create
before you
alerts
move,
and recalls.
real quick before you move, does anybody have any questions right here that they want to address? Because we're kind of in a good spot before we switch out.
I was also going to say, Derek, if you wanted to take a break now, we're welcome to do that. So it's up to you.
I think so. If everybody has like 5 more minutes in them, I think it'd be worth going through the just quickly going through alerts and recalls and being able to bulk update before jumping. And then because next we're going to go to the actual like clinician requester experience. So if everybody's got like 5 to 8 minutes in them, I think it'd be worth going through that first.
Yep, that's fine, Derek. Thank you.
Cool. All right. And we don't need to spend a ton of time here, but we do have the ability to create alerts and recalls here. So we can see a couple examples. Infusion pump may not operate as expensive. The bezel posts became cracked. We can also include any other types of recalls. And this is a good way to make a lot of work orders at once that may apply to a number of our different devices. So we can go ahead, have this automatically assigned out to a group or to a technician. We can have a description here, which can help with if we are going to be following some certain steps and we don't necessarily want to create like a checklist and a whole procedure for it. And so if this is a recall or a discovery event, this is really just creating a bunch of different work orders. And here we have our different parameters similar to setting up the scheduled maintenance, but this is just kind of that one-time creation if I want to make a bunch at once. So again, we have our different parameters. We can get visibility into all our affected assets. And then we can also see all of the different work orders that have been generated from this particular recall event. And so this is just a quick way to make a bunch of work orders all at once. And because all of these are the same type of work, I'm now going to move into being able to bulk update work orders. And as a technician, I'm going to get visibility into all of the work that is assigned to myself. And if I wanted to select all of them, I can go ahead and do that. And it's actually going to automatically group them together for me next. So let's say I want to update all of my work. But the system's going to say, okay, no, these are not all the same type of work. So it went ahead and grouped them together for me. And then I have a couple outlier work orders as well that I'm not going to be able to update in bulk just because whether it's related to different types of assets or it's a different type of work order, I'm not going to be able to do that all at once. But because if we have the same types of work, I can go ahead, I'm going to update all of my bed safety at once, proceed to bulk edit, and now I can change any of the fields in that work order in a big sweeping, whether I'm just closing all of them out at once, I'm assigning all of them out at once. This is just a way to kind of edit a lot of work orders all at the same time. And just as well, if there were any sort of checklists associated to this, we can see enter client's name, type of bed. Probably not going to be doing that for this because we'll have different beds for everything, but we do have the ability to answer checklists all at once as well. If we're closing out like a big group of PMs and we don't want to have to go into each of them individually, we can go ahead and update those checklists all at once from this bulk edit here. So I know we went through that kind of quickly, but any questions around being able to create a bunch of work orders from a recall, as well as updating your work orders in bulk as a technician? All right. I will take that as a no, and I think this is a good place for everybody to use the bathroom and stretch your legs.
Great, thanks, Dick. And I was going to say, I'm going to, while everybody's out on their break, so everybody, could you please be back, let's say at 11:10, so that should give you guys 13 minutes. Derek, I'm going to be posting the report that we're going to be wanting to generate, so I'll make sure to put that in our chat here in just a second. So everybody else be back by 11:10, please.
All right.
So, sorry, Derek, let me just find it here for you. Okay, here we go. Okay, so hopefully you can see it. It says trending failure codes on infusion pumps.
All right. It came in a strange
Might be, maybe I can email it over to you. Let me do that. Okay, so forward. Wait a second there, Derek.
One
Okay.
thing I do want to point out when creating this report, since we didn't know of the report beforehand, the data may just look a little strange
Yeah.
for it. Like we just might not have that many work orders, or
That's
the
fair.
problem cause may just look
more
strange.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's more the exercise and how to do it. It's not so much the trending data, because we understand it's a sandbox instance, so that's okay. Sorry, Derek, I had to go the long way to get to your email address. Here you go. Okay, so I just sent it over.
Oh, all right.
Hopefully that one's easier to read.
I've been talking to you on mute. Yes, I just received it. That's much better.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Derek. Okay, well, we'll be resuming shortly. I'm gonna go grab myself a water, so we'll talk in a second.
All right. Yep, you do your thing. I'm also gonna step away for a moment.
Good idea. All right, everyone, it's 11:09, so we should all be heading back. Derek, are you back online?
Yes, I am.
All right, sounds good. We'll just wait until the turnover 11:10 there, our time, of course, and then we can get started again.
Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen before we start.
All right, Derek, you can get started.
Beautiful. Okay. So now we are kind of shifting gears and moving into the role of the end user or our clinicians or nurses that will actually be using Nuvolo to submit these service requests. And so we are currently looking at the Nuvolo self-service portal. Again, it is a user-specific login, and just tying back to what Matt mentioned earlier, these are not considered licensed users of Nuvolo. Everybody will be able to have access to this. We do typically tie into your Active Directory, and that's kind of where we pull in the information in terms of the email and logins and things like that. If you are familiar or currently using ServiceNow today, this may look pretty familiar, and we can actually just attach right onto your current service portal. So that way, for people that are used to using that service portal for any sort of IT requests or things like that, it really helps with user adoption because they have one place to go for everybody to submit any type of request.
So one real quick on that. So they were sharing a ServiceNow platform. So maybe many of them are not aware of ServiceNow. And to give everybody kind of an update, I know something came up about system performance. So we are a scoped application on top of ServiceNow. ServiceNow is a cloud platform. Obviously, they're a very large company, 99.9999% uptime. But so our uptime, our performance, then is based upon obviously the ability of ServiceNow and their cloud platform. We're not separate. We're not on any servers. We're a cloud application and built upon ServiceNow. And that's so that should answer many of those. Unless anybody has any questions in regards to ServiceNow and what a scoped application means but I don't know how many people probably know about ServiceNow, Derek. That's why I wanted to stop and bring that up.
Okay, that totally makes sense.
So does anybody have any questions in regards to how that works? Again, we're not on a server. We're cloud-based, and we are built upon ServiceNow instance, which you guys had. We will sell you one as part of this package, but any questions in regards to that relationship? Okay. Go ahead.
All right. So when it comes to the service portal for Nuvolo, we notice a couple of key things right up on the front page. So we have first this knowledge base, and this can really be used almost as an internal Google search. Frequently asked questions or any sort of knowledge articles or just pieces of information that you do want to give everyone access to can be loaded into this service portal for everybody to search and access. And then we also can see here, Nuvolo does extend into facilities management, even space management. We aren't going through those modules today. They are separate modules priced a bit differently. But if you ever did move in that direction with Nuvolo, we do have the ability to kind of grow and expand with yourselves as well. And then we can see down below any of the open requests that I have submitted. So as the requester, I can actually go in and see all of the requests that I myself have submitted and then quickly be able to open those up, which we'll see in just a moment. And this entire screen is able to be configured or really customized to your needs. So if we want to pull in certain what we call catalog items, which is really just the types of different requests, pull that up onto the front screen to help out with employees so they don't need to do a lot of clicking around or anything, we do have the ability to do that. And we'll go ahead into our medical equipment request. And here we're going to see a couple of different options when it comes to submitting these requests. We have a disposal request, equipment distribution request, just reporting a device issue, so kind of standard requests there. And then there are, if you do want to add in other types of requests, you do have that ability as well. And so the first example we're going to do is actually this report clinical work order. And this will open us up into this next screen. And so it's actually going to have a floor plan for us. If you do have your floor plans today in an AutoCAD form, we do have the ability to upload those into Nuvolo. And the reason this particular floor did pop up for myself is because this is the floor that I am assigned to. And that's really to make it as easy as possible for your clinicians. I understand, doctors, nurses, they're moving all around the hospital, but if they are typically working on one floor, it does just make it easier to have that one be the first one to pop up every time. But then, of course, I do have the ability to search for different floors as well. And so we can see our color code here is by department. And so we can actually, that also helps out, sometimes people aren't super familiar with the floor plan. So just being able to understand, oh, okay, this is my surgery department, here's my nursing, and these sort of general administration, our radiology department, just to kind of help get my bearings here. One of the other things that we do notice is this blue dot. And this is actually indicating that there is already an open work order here for a showcase move. And this is kind of that first line of defense for any sort of duplicate work orders that are going to get submitted. And that helps out with the fulfiller side, not having duplicate data, as well as, not reporting to the same issue twice for something that you have already resolved. So hopefully people will notice that, will say, okay, I don't need to submit this. And then submitting any sort of new issue, all I have to do is select into that space, and it's going to automatically populate who this was reported by. And excuse me. And what's nice about that is all of the information of this user is actually going to be tied directly to that user. So if I do need to reach out to a specific phone number, if I do want to know who their manager is or what their email is, all of that will be tied back. And again, as a technician, you may want to block them off from having that information. Everything is roles and permissions based. And then next, it is going to auto-populate that work location. And so associated to that is going to be, which floor, which site, which campus is that located at. And just as well, I can include what asset is actually the issue here. And so I'm able to search for any of the assets in the system, and also providing a brief order summary of what the actual issue is, any sort of order details. And then I can also include attachments if I do want to submit a picture here. And all of these fields are configurable. So if we want to collect additional pieces of information that you're not seeing here, we can also include that on this form. And I know one of the questions that was brought up was being able to scan a barcode. And so we do have that ability. If there is a barcode scanner that's integrated to the system, and you want to be able to just scan that and automatically pull it in to fill in this asset information. And when we go through the mobile perspective of it, I'll also talk through how we can set that up to be able to scan just using the native scanning capabilities of the phone. And so that's just one way to submit these requests. We can also, if you don't have floor plans, we have these pre-configured forms to make sure that all the necessary information is captured. And so we'll go ahead and select into this report a clinical device issue. And again, if It's going to auto-populate who it was reported by. I can actually choose if I want to select this based on an asset or a location. Doing it by space does allow you to do it at any level of the space hierarchy. So rather than like a specific room, I could do a whole floor or a building. We'll keep this for asset. And so I now have a list view into all of my different assets. So I can search by asset tag, by the make model. So if I just type in infusion pump, it's going to bring up all those for me. If I want to type in the actual asset tag and say, and so just by typing in the beginning of it, I can see all of my different asset tags. And then it's also going to populate all the information that's associated to this asset. So what is our asset type? What's our manufacturer? What's our make and model? Whose department is responsible for this? And then I can also see any of the active work orders. So I can see I do have an open work order at this location, but it's not necessarily tied to this asset. So I can go ahead and keep moving forward with this work order. And so we'll say we just need to get a new battery. And again, if I do want to upload an attachment here, I can go ahead and do that. I can either choose a file or drag and drop something if I have something on my other screen just to add it there. And once we have all this information filled out, I can go ahead and submit that. And before I do that, I do want to point out again that if we do want to add in additional details here, we have that ability. We can see here, all we're doing is choosing the asset. But if we did want to have to choose first our building and then our floor and then our location, and then it'll pull up all the different assets in that location, we also do have the ability to do that. And so I'll go ahead and submit this. And as the person that submitted this request, I have the ability to come back here at any time to keep track of any sort of updates that have happened on this actual work order. So right now it's in a state of draft. And I'll also receive email notifications letting me know that my request has been submitted, my request has been assigned, as well as when it gets completed. And those notifications are configurable. A lot of times people, when they start out, they say, oh, we want people to be notified of everything. And then it just becomes very noisy and, people stop looking at it. So it's good to have just very concise notifications, perhaps setting it up for when it gets submitted and when it gets completed. And in between, you're not going to bother much of the requester. And then also when it gets submitted, we can see our department here. If this was assigned directly to a user based on whether it's the asset that the work order is against or the location of it, it might get automatically assigned to a specific group or end user, and they'll also receive that notification that a new work order has been assigned to them. And I will jump into that in just a moment. And one more thing on this screen, we can also communicate directly with whether it be the technician or the supervisor that is responsible for this if I did want to ask for a quick status update. And all of this will be tracked back to the work order, so we will have that whole conversation history. And then if I ever need to add in an additional attachment after the fact, like a picture or something, I can do that as well.
So real quick, Derek. So Jane, can somebody that's not under Active Directory put in a work request if you allow them, and then maybe you have a field for who the contact is and what their email, but that's again an internal process more than a Nuvolo process.
Yep, so they don't necessarily need to be in your Active Directory, but they would need to have some sort of way to sign in to Nuvolo. So whether it's, you're just manually creating certain users that will have that access, but they would need to have some way to log in. All right. I saw there's a question around the floor plan integrations with XDome Medigate. So is a quick question there. Is XDome?
Yeah, I responded there that we'll have to check on that. I don't know if we can use their floor plans because we have our own, but we'll have to look into that.
The floor plans actually come in through Cisco integration that we have with Medigate/XDome. So all that gets fed into Medigate. So it'd basically be like a secondary integration.
Okay. So as long as the way the floor plans are read in Nuvolo, they do need to be polyline floor plans. So like things like a PDF, we can pull those into Nuvolo, sure thing, but they're just not going to be interactive, if that makes sense. All right. So now let's take a look at any other questions from the end user perspective, and then I'm going to jump to the mobile login for folks to submit requests from the mobile app. All right. So we should be looking at an iPad up on the screen right now.
Yep.
And the Nuvolo service portal is actually going to be accessible right from the ServiceNow app. And so when we go into our home page here, I can actually see all of the different requests that I have submitted here. And then I'm going to move into the services. And so as an end user, I'd be able to have access to this, and I can see all of my different recent services that I've used before, but then I can also browse all of the different services that are available within the tool. And they might only have access to a couple of them. And we'll go ahead and select this report a clinical device issue. And it's going to pull up that same pre-configured form here where I can choose, is this related to an asset? Is it related to a location? I can go ahead and choose which asset I want to apply this to, and it's going to pull all that information there. We don't have a model tied to this particular asset for whatever reason. And again, it will pull up any of those active work orders, whether it's related to the asset or the actual location that asset is located in. And then I can go ahead, I can either save this as a draft or even add attachments. So I can open up my camera, I can open up my photo library or attach a file from right there. And that's one other thing to point out here, is that when we are pulling up our assets, it would take a pretty heavy configuration to do this, but you could set it up so that we can actually scan from this mobile app. When we get into the technician's shoes, we have it set up already that they can use the barcode scanner, but as a requester, that would take some additional steps. Then I can go ahead and submit this. And once it gets submitted, I can see, okay, nice, it's already been submitted, and then I can close that out. And if I ever do want to look back at my request, I can see and go back and open this up. I can look at all my different details of this work order, as well as take a look into any updates that have happened, even add in some additional comments myself, or go ahead and take that picture again, or look at any of the pictures that have already been submitted. All right. Any questions on the mobile perspective for the end user requests? Okay. So now let's see, what would the email look like for a technician to once they actually get assigned out this work, and just notifications in general. What do they look like within Nuvolo? And so if we move back, we can see all of the different notifications that are within the system. And so notifications can actually be configured to and triggered at any event in the system. So when a new record is added, when something gets assigned to you, when a work order gets completed, all of those can trigger notifications to specific folks. And so let's take a look at what an email looks like for when when a task gets assigned out. And so it'll tell us when we actually want this to send. We can choose what category this falls into, who will receive this email, as well as what will this email actually contain. And this one actually doesn't seem to have much info. I clicked on the wrong one by accident. We'll do this assignment group. And then we can go ahead and preview this notification. And so we can see that it has been assigned to this group, and we can even go ahead right from the email, select into this task. I can also unsubscribe from emails. You can also take away the power for people to do that, as well as set up my own notification preferences. If I do feel like I'm just getting inundated with emails that don't seem to be too applicable and I just don't care because I'm constantly looking at the system anyways. I'm usually pretty up to date. So I can control the amount of emails that I'll be getting. All right, so we just saw how a clinician or anybody can go into the system and submit work orders, whether it's from the desktop or from the mobile device, as well as what it would look like from an email perspective when something does get assigned. Any questions there? Okay. So with that, we will shift into the reporting and dashboard portion. And so we walked through that technician report, but first, and now you're looking at our PM planning, but we're actually going to start with just our manager, where we kind of started today, and being able to have visibility as a manager. And so we're currently looking at just an example of a dashboard for a supervisor or somebody responsible for keeping track of all the work that has been assigned. And all of these different reports and all of these dashboards are able to be configured to your needs. And it's really quite simple to start changing these around. If I want to create a new tab or add in an additional report or widget here, I can do that. If I want to start playing with the size of some of these reports and doing a different layout, I'll have the ability to set that up for myself. And it's really quite user-friendly and simple to make any of these small changes here. And so going through, we have over 100 different reports out of the box with areas around cost tracking and work order trends and PM planning. And just to go through some of the reports that we can see here. And one other thing to note, I'm not sure if I've mentioned, all of these are dynamic. So I can actually select into any of these work orders that I need to assign. And now I can see all of my work orders here. And now I have that nice list view where I'm still going to have that same power if I want to show matching, filter, create a report from here. And we'll go back into that home page. We have our aging reports. I know one of the questions was being able to change these colors, and absolutely the reports, you do have the ability to update those colors, and we'll go through the report builder in just a bit after this. And then we have our allocation of time reports, so understanding how much time are our technicians spending, whether it's travel or labor time, what our backlog is by technician, If we can see Colin has quite a few, we may want to assign those out to some of our folks that don't have as much on their plate. We can also have the ability, right now we are looking at this by assigned to, but we can break this down by the different state or even the priorities of our work order. Right now we have this stacked by state, but let's go ahead and change that to priority, where we can see just the different types of priority our work orders our technicians have. We have productivity by technician, whether we want to group this by technician or if we had a certain service provider that we were keeping an eye on. Our on-time completion, so whether or not we are finishing our work orders on time. And then also being able to have a nice schedule view into when our work is actually going to be completed, whether this is work that's going to be done internally or keeping track of when are our vendors actually going to be showing up to complete this work and having that nice calendar view in that. And these dashboards, they can be set up on an individual basis. That way, when I log in, I'm going to have all the reports that I care about. When Matt logs in, he'll be able to have all the reports that he cares about and pertain to his day-to-day job. They can also be shared between user groups. So if I have a group of technicians where I want them to all see the same dashboard and be able to keep track of the work orders as they're coming in and maybe assign them to themselves, we can set them up for shared groups or a leadership dashboard. We can see a lot of different examples that we have here. And then so next I'll go into the PM planning. So getting an understanding for our work orders, this is actually by site. This is how our different sites are named within this demo environment. And I can actually select into that, see all my PMs that are at those specific sites, as well as PM planning hours. So not only being able to plan for our parts by month, but also being able to say, okay, how many hours of PMs do we have for our upcoming months? Right now, this is grouped. We can see here by what floor they're actually located at. But we could also group this together by our specific models. So understanding when we have certain PMs coming up. And then down below, this is quite a large report, so we could shrink this down, make it a bit easier to read. But just getting an understanding for how many different hoses, how many different coils or filters are we going to need throughout the year, and then being able to have that totaled as well. And so we can see here, there's quite a few different reports that we've been looking at. We've seen some pie charts, some bar charts. We can also have these list views and do some math in these reports to actually get total quantities, whether it's based on the month or at the end of the year when we are looking at our total quantities. And next, I'll jump into the environment of care. So getting an understanding for, all right, how many PMs have been generated, how many PMs have been completed, any PMs that we've seen with a failure, any sort of unscheduled work that's been completed or incomplete. What are the reasons for that? Is it user error, improper use? Has it actually been physically damaged? Being able to report on all those different types of items, as well as our other work here, any sort of hazards or recalls. How many devices have we actually added to our inventory? And we could filter this if we want to look in the past month, in the past year, as well as all of our different sites and their work. What our hazard and alert and recall completion has been, what stages within the work order have our work orders gone to, our PM completions monthly, and again, just having a couple different examples of these reports. And so any questions, we just walked through how we can have lots of different dashboards set up for different uses, as well as a few different examples of these different types of reports. And then we will go in and actually go into the report builder right after this. Okay. Let me quickly pull back up that email for the report that we were looking for. All right. We're looking for a list of open work orders to understand failure codes on our infusion pumps. And so admittedly, that may be just a strange report for us. So I may change this to, we're just going to look at our work orders that are all pending. So typically, one of the easier ways to make reports is going to be from any sort of list view. And so we'll go down, and I'm an admin, so I have all these other modules like our facilities management, GXP here. This won't be there for everybody, so it'll be a lot less cluttered. Let's go ahead and we're going to open up all of our open pending work orders. And I'll go ahead and filter out all of our different PMs. So that way we just don't have tons of different work orders to look at that aren't super related to this. But let's go ahead. And so walk us through pulling up a report of all open corrective work for infusion pumps. So if I wanted to do that, let's say we only want to look at our corrective work orders. There may not be a lot in the system right now, so I just want to make sure we have enough data to actually work with. Okay. So we only have a few there. Is it all right if we just do all of our work order types that are not PMs? And then we'll be able to sort a lot there.
Yeah, that's fine, Derek. We're just going through the mechanics here.
All right, sure. All right, so to start creating a report, I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to group this by our work order type for right now. And I'm just going to go ahead and make a bar chart. And so that was quite a few different work orders that we have here. And pretty quickly, it generates this nice little bar chart for us. And so let's start at the beginning of how is this kind of getting created. So first we have our data. You know, what's the name of this report? We can go ahead and change this information if we want to say work orders by type and failure code. And then next is, okay, what is the actual source of this data? And it's coming from a table within the system. If this was coming from any sort of external data source or an external import, maybe from an Excel sheet, or if it is getting pulled from a different tool through an integration. But for now, we're going to keep this with table. Next, it's actually saying, okay, what table then within Nuvolo are we pulling from? And this is from our clinical work order table. We are able to report on multiple different tables at once through what's called dot walking. And so next, we are going to go into what type of report do we want to make? Do we want to create a bar chart? Do we want to create a histogram? There's a couple different types of bar charts here. We can also have a pie or a donut chart, even being able to visualize this over time. So like a time series type of report, any sort of multi-dimensional reports, so something like a heat map that you may want to use for, or a pivot table that you may want to use for understanding the risk of your different types of assets and devices. Even just single point scores, we saw a few examples of those within the dashboards. And then we have a couple of other types of reports, whether it's on a calendar or a box type report, funnel being able to visualize on a map as well. And so let's actually select, we just want to have a list view report. All right. And so now within our list view, report, we can actually choose what columns do we want to look at. And so it looks like we want to have our work order number, which is already included, date created. So we can go ahead and pull in the created date. So we can see that here. We can move that if we want to reorder this around. The work order type, and looks like we need to pull that in. Work order type, and we can see these little plus marks. This is that dot walking I was talking about. If I did want to expand and look at our work order type table and pull from some of those fields as well, and we may need to do that to get to some of this information, but not for that one. We can reorder this again. And then the work order status, so that's the state of this. Our failure code, so that's and again, that can be a field that's either added in, or you can rename the problem cause here. Which site that's located at. And so we're actually, to get to site, we are going to go to work location. Then we can, what I just did was I expanded that out. So if we go to the top of this, we'd see all the location fields. And so now we have all of our different location fields that we can take a look at. And we want to, oh, I might need to do this again. Space. We have our floor there. Let's see if we can find site. Then we can go ahead and bring in that site. Manufacturer. So now we can go back. So now we're just looking back at the work order fields again. And so to get to site, we just need to take a look at asset manufacturer. Or I mean, to look at manufacturer, we do the same for model. And then date accepted, that might be something like, we can just keep this for now. And we're going to get rid of some of these. We can also just double click. I have the ability, if I want to bring it over like that, and like that, I can bring it back, or just double clicking. But all right, this is good. I like these columns. This will make a nice, easy to read report for us. And so when I make those updates, I do have to select next. And it's going to rebuild that report for me. And now I have all those different columns here that I can take a look at. And it's right now, it's only grouped by the work order type. So let's say we want to add in an additional group by. So let's say we also want to group this together by the site. So we'll go back to that work location and expand that out. And again, we're going to expand out that space. So now we can also organize this by site. And let's see, is there any other types of sorting we want to do? All right, that's good for now. We can also add in function fields. So I don't want to get rid of this yet. But so that's if we want to do any sort of kind of like trending or math, or if we want to add things together, we can add in dynamic fields there that are going to look at two different pieces of information and add them together or divide by that. That can be helpful when you're looking at like cost per square footage types of reports. That is a more in-depth report than I'm really prepared to build out right now. But you do have the ability to add in those function fields as well. And so when we save that, so now we can see we have these different options. We have work order type, but we also have the space and the site. So now we can also have this group together by not only the type, but okay, now we have visibility into all of the different work orders at these different sites. And even from this report, I can actually go ahead and make updates right from it, even while I'm still building it. All right. And let's see, I'm trying to read through the directions at the same time. Oh, okay. All right. And then so let's say we also want to filter this by just specific parameters. So right now, these are kind of the automatic parameters that we included just from that list that we chose from, because we chose just to have our draft or pending assignment work orders, but also if they were not going to be PMs. And so let's say we have and or ors. That sounded silly. And so let's say we want to look at our created date. We only want to look at work orders that were created before or at or before. So we can do like ranges at or after, so between. And then we have the ability to pick our dates here. So let's say between last year and 6 months ago. Let's hope when I run this, we're still going to have some good data in there. That's how we can filter by our different dates here. So we can go ahead and run that. And so now it's changed to only 85 different work orders compared to the couple hundred that we were looking at before. And again, we're still going to have the ability to change our different group bys. If this was to be something like a bar chart, I can go ahead, that'll be updated by that. Then we can see this stacked by. So then we can also stack this by site. So we can see not only our work order types, but also our site. We can even include an additional stack by if we want to look at our assignment group. We can go ahead and do that. And oh, these are all unassigned work orders, so they're not going to have an assignment group. And we're going to go back and put this back into a list view. And next. So here we can start changing some of our title, what color it is, the size of some of our information here, like how big is the font on this, as well as what our alignment is for this. And once we are happy with this, I do need to save this report first. And so now it's saved. And let's say I want to share this report out with somebody else, or I want to add this to a dashboard even. So I can choose to share this report with whether it be everyone or certain groups of users and people that are in the system. I can even schedule this report to run on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. We can even set our own periods for this and have it emailed to specific users or even groups, or an outside email address that we may want to send it to. We can actually include what type of report do we want to send this in? Do we want to just send it as a PDF where they can't really make any updates? Or do we want to send this as an Excel sheet where it'll actually push every one of those different work orders into a row in an Excel sheet, and that way we can kind of manipulate it from there. And so we can schedule this to run at any sort of interval that we do that we would like, as well as exporting to PDF here. And then also being able to add this directly to a dashboard. So if I want to put it onto that HTM manager dashboard, I can go ahead and do that. And that way the information will be updated in real time. I'll always have visibility into it. I can go ahead and add that. And then when I add that, we can see here it pops up right on the top for this of this dashboard. And again, I'm able to move this around if, let's say, I want to actually go like that, make this report a bit bigger. So I have quite a bit of flexibility when it comes to setting these up. Any questions around the report builder and being able to play around with the different reports?
I think we're looking good, Derek. Oh, Jane's got a question.
This one will be too hard to type. So if I was to share this as a dashboard, and I made it open to everybody, does that mean that every single person who has access to it can then customize it on their view and it won't affect my view?
That's a great question. And so as a shared dashboard, you could have it set up so that nobody would be able to change it around. If they were to change it for themselves, they could also just pretty quickly create a copy of it and manipulate it so they have a view into it, and it's still going to be the same reports. It's just going to look different to them, and it's just going to be a different copy. But as a shared dashboard, typically you're kind of going to be the owner of it if you set it up. So you might lock down any sort of changes you might make, but then you'd still, everybody would have the ability to create a copy of it and make those updates. And it would be the same reports. So none of the information would change. It would just be specific to them. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I think next step is going to be jumping into the mobile application for technicians. Okay. Unless there's any other questions here. Beautiful. All right. So now we are back looking at the iPad screen and the Nuvolo mobile application, which is different from what we were looking at earlier, which was actually just the ServiceNow mobile app, which you do get access to as a Nuvolo customer for the clinicians that are submitting the request. But the Nuvolo mobile app is really designed with the technician in mind. It's meant to be pretty simplistic. We can scan our assets, we can scan our work orders and be able to complete them while we're on the go, as well as create new work orders. And one item to point out is that we do actually have a very revamped version of our Nuvolo mobile app coming out in our next release, which is sometime in the spring, and it's going to be pretty well updated. I can't speak to all of the different updates and enhancements on it right now, but it'll have everything we're looking at today and more. So just something to keep in mind, especially when we're looking at the implementation of this. You know, it might be during that time where it would make sense to go with the newer version of the app.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. Again, this is going to be first part of next year, like into the first quarter or so, and I think that's probably when this moves forward.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that makes sense. So yeah, well, yeah, just keep in mind when we're going through this, you're not going to lose any of this functionality, of course. You're just going to be gaining some. All right, so when we're looking at the mobile app as a technician, like I mentioned, it's supposed to be pretty simplistic. You know, I can see all of my work that is assigned to myself down below, as well as we can pull up reports onto the mobile app if I do want to view my work orders by priority or by location, if I'm going to be spending a lot of time in one area for the day. And so first, and then we can see my work this month. That the reason that's 0 is just because I have nothing that actually has a due date at the end of this month. But we can see all work. So out of all the work orders, about 1,300 of them are due this month. Then I can also get visibility into all of the open work orders, as well as all of our different assets. And so first, we are going to jump into the total work orders, and we're going to see how we can actually scan a piece of equipment and be able to quickly pull up all the work orders that are open and associated to that piece of equipment. So we can see I do have the ability, if I did want to just type into the search bar what asset I'm looking for, or I can go ahead and press those three. Oh, that was so fast. We can see, okay, I just scanned that barcode, and it pretty quickly opened up the two work orders that I have for it. I'm going to open up this one that is already a work in progress here. And so when we're looking at this work order from a technician perspective, it is really easy to start keeping track of my time. So as a technician, we can see that little play button in the grayed out box. And so just by tapping on that, it's going to start keeping track of time, whether that is my travel time, my labor time, or I'm starting to collect my materials and I just want to be able to track that back to the work order. And so it's pretty simple. If I do forget to do that, I'll show in just a bit how we can add in a labor entry after the fact. But then on this work order, I can see some general information. You know, what asset is this? Where is this currently located? I can even open it up onto a floor plan. Who is the assignment on this? What's our quick work order summary? What's the schedule for this look like? And then moving across our different tabs up at the top, I can also see my checklist here. And so again, if I want to add in any sort of picture or a comment field into any of these checklist questions, I do have the ability to do that. And then it's pretty simple, just going through our different checklists or steps in the procedure to go through and complete this. And then once I complete that, I'll also have any sort of verification data like we saw when we went through this on the desktop. Moving across our tabs. So next we have our resolution. So being able to include what date of service did I do this on? What was our problem cause for this? As well as our resolution code, being able to do that right from the mobile application. And then down below, we can also see all of those different itemized costs. If I did want to add in an additional itemized cost, I just press those three little buttons. I can add in a new cost entry. So whether this is for labor or for travel, I can go ahead and make those updates there. And I can go ahead and save that. And then down below, it's pretty quickly going to save that. See, I have a new work order entry. And then if it is an asset or a work order that's under contract, I'll also get visibility into that directly from the mobile application. So this can be helpful for technicians that are actively working with a vendor, or they're just keeping track of their work. Because if you don't want to give access to Nuvolo to your vendors, you still need your internal technicians to keep track of these things. That way they can call them or just at least have access to their contact info, as well as what is the actual coverage for it. And then moving across. So next we can include any sort of attachments directly from the mobile device as well as being able to add in any sort of signatures. I can go ahead and save that. Or a picture if I want to take a picture of the device, whether it's because it's a job well done and I just need to show proof that I resolved the issue, or it's damaged and I want to be able to document that and have that directly related to the work order. We can also see any sort of related knowledge. This can be O&M manuals, whether it's linked at the model level or at the asset level. So that way I'll always have access to that if it's a work order pertaining to a specific model. And if I did want to create any sort of new work order, all I need to do, we see those three little lines in the top right. And on the left side, we see a lot of different things here. And again, that's just because I'm an administrator. but we will go ahead and open up this clinical work order manager where we can see creating a new work order, looking at my assets, or creating a new asset even. And that's okay. I'm not going to save these changes. And creating a new work order here, I'm able to pull in what asset is this. We'll just select that for time's sake, as well as, what location. If the asset was already tied to a location, it would pull that in automatically. Assign this out. If, I started doing the work and then somebody else is going to go ahead and complete it after me, I have the ability to add in all of those additional details. And then again, we can go through all those same tabs here. And let's go back and take a look at that asset inventory. So we'll open up that clinical work order manager again. While this loads up, we can see right at the top, it might be tough to see on your computer screen, but underneath clinical dashboard, there is a little blue line and it says online. And so there is both an online and offline mode. So if a technician does ever find themselves in a basement or just an area where they don't have any sort of service, they'll always be able to still have access to their work and be able to input the information. And then once they're back connected to Wi-Fi, everything's going to sync back up and download back to the central Nuvolo database. Then when we're looking at our assets, so if we want to view or change or update additional asset information, again, I can go ahead and I can either type in a specific asset or I can go ahead and scan for that. And that'll just pull up that one asset that matches that asset tag. I can select into it. If I do want to change the install status or the condition or the installation date, our asset type, what our operational status is, wherever this is located, as well as our vendor details, I can go ahead and update that directly from the application. If we are keeping track of specific metrics here.
And also to be clear, Derek, not all of that has to be on there, right? You guys can design that to be, what you guys want. If you guys go, well, God, that's way too much information. Well, that's completely up to you to design how you guys want it to be designed.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, if you're looking at it and you're like, oh, there's, I don't need all this information here. This is also a configurable app. And then I can also go ahead and add in new assets directly from this. And so it is a configuration, but we would be able to pull in the service history as well. And so it's not something in this demo environment that has been done for our clinical devices, but I can show you this from our facilities devices, and it'll work in the same fashion. And so I'll go ahead, I'm just opening up that devices list again. And so this is a configuration, something to keep in mind. But just scanned that asset right there. I'm going to go ahead and open up one of these. We're looking at an example of an air handling unit here. And then we can see this little eye in those tabs up at the top. And so this will actually show us our service history. So all of the different work orders that are related to this particular asset. And then again, this is a configuration. So it's just something to keep in mind. It would be a enhancement during implementation, but then we can also directly from here create a new work order on this asset where it's going to automatically pull in the asset information rather than having to search or type that in. All right, so we just walked through the technician experience of being able to complete work on the go, as well as scan different assets and create new work orders as they go through the building, all from the mobile device. Are there any questions there?
Yeah, real quick, let's touch on this one again. Does it work with any authentication devices? Of course, we will pick up your security policies, right? So whatever it's got to go through, if it's yours, it's single sign-on aspects, right?
Yep, exactly. So yeah, especially if you're using any sort of authentication, like what are some of the examples, like SSO,
whatever, right?
or
Yeah.
just something like that, we can follow all those safety protocols.
So
I do
might have
know
missed.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I might have missed it, but can you add parts to the mobile app for the tech?
Oh, yes, I can. Let me go back into one of those work orders. And we'll just open up any one of these. And so as the tech, I can go in, we can see all of our itemized costs here. This one actually doesn't have any itemized costs yet, but if I were to add in a cost entry, I can go ahead and just change this from a labor to parts, and then I'd be able to search for my parts and add that in from here. So if I was searching, say handle kit, what quantity was this, as well as bin number. So yes, you are able to add in those parts directly from the work order as well, and then we can also change the dollar amount if we know that, or if it's already an inventoried part and we have that dollar amount, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions there?
So
I did
Derek,
have
was there
one.
anything? Well, go ahead. Go ahead there, Steve.
I did have one other question, but it was related to the web requests rather than the mobile app.
Oh, sure thing.
Okay, so, and I put it on the, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to somebody again. Can you use the talk to text, right, to put in information?
Oh, yes, you can. Good question.
Okay, so my question was, we use a system with a PSLS, Patient Safety and Learning System, and my question was, if a patient gets injured and a nurse fills out a web request, and we want to flag that so that it immediately sends out an email to like the supervisor of the biomed department, maybe that department head or something like that, but we want it to be done instantaneously. Is that a possibility, or is there something you have to do special to make that happen?
Oh, that's definitely a possibility. It would just be triggering a specific notification. So it would just be putting in that notification setup, so that way, whenever those like really critical events, whether it's the person's manager or department head, they're going to be notified and receive that notification. But you can definitely set up notifications to be sent out to multiple people, and immediately as well.
Thank you.
And this is here's another one too. Drag and drop a document to a work order from your desktop.
Oh, sorry. Could you repeat that for me?
Yeah, like drag and drop a document from your desktop onto a work order or an asset.
So like I'll open up a work order example. The drag and drop will work. It's just you're still gonna have to first click into adding in an attachment, and then instead of choosing a file, you'd be able to drag something onto that. I think I have a little screenshot here. And yep, see, I just dragged that on, and we can see that in there.
Okay.
Derek, I don't know if you answered this already, but there was a question earlier about renaming fields, and that could be most used in like our regional. Sometimes we call a field one thing different from each region, or it could be a clinical reference. Is it easy to change the field names to a nickname, so to speak?
Well, let me address that, because of course this is going to be system wide. So if you make a change, it's going to be a change for everyone. So the power of having a cloud system over 7 regions and starting to synchronize everything is that everybody doesn't have different names of things, and because it causes very inconsistencies when it comes to reporting. So the nomenclature and standardization is critical for success, because otherwise all of your reports will be different because you're not calling them the same thing.
Great.
And then
Thanks,
on the flip side of that, you do it is pretty easy to make the changes. But just like Matt said, if you are going to be making global changes, especially to a region's name, or let's say, you know, we're looking at our space hierarchy, and you want to change, you know, region to hospital system, that would be a change that everybody would see.
Great. Thanks, Derek.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
There was a question about ESRI alerts. I know you quickly touched on it, Derek, but when it comes to the alerts, ESRI pulls them every Friday, or at least our practices that we pull them every Friday. Does the system have a way to populate those ESRI alerts into a log system?
Yes, we do actually have an integration with ECRI to pull in those recalls and updates and alerts into Nuvolo, and so those work orders could be automatically generated from that. We would just want to make sure that that is properly scoped out for the implementation.
Great. Yeah. Well, I mean, that I believe is a different module. It's not of the box functionality. Is that right?
Yes.
It's not that it's a different module. It would just be an integration that needs to be created, because, you know, any sort of integration, you know, it's our integration with ECRI is considered technically out of the box integration because it's set up and it's there, but you would still need to do the end-to-end connection of that.
But it's also they're talking about it also having it tied with OT security. So yeah, you can do that, but if you're going to tie it with Medigate and everything else, that's something different.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. A good thing, one of the things to think about, and this is probably as good as point as any to talk about this, we're changing your whole system, right? If you go with Nuvolo or whomever. So what we tell people is, hey, let's get the system up and running. Let's keep it, you know, let's keep it as base as we can, because then you can figure out what it does, what it doesn't do, what you like to have, what you want to switch. Is there a way to do it? And then 6 months in, you're like, okay, we've got a handle on it, and so we're not changing things that didn't need to be changed because you figured out that we can do it differently than your current system or whatever. So it's really key for success is to get your feet going, right? To do the crawl, walk, run, and then once you get comfortable with how it works, your people are comfortable, then you can add new change, right? Because this is going to be a big task if it's us or anybody else getting everybody to something new. And so it's really key to keep these things in your mind. Don't forget about them, but to really stay as close out of the box as you can, to really have you guys understand the capabilities, where they might be different than what you want, where you might want to do an integration, where we might cover that integration with another process where you don't need it. So that's the part that's really critical. And anybody you choose, like I said, us or anybody else, get comfortable with the system, understand its ins and outs. Then, okay, now we believe these are critical that we want to either pay for or do or change. Because if you do them early, sometimes we do work for nothing, and I see that often. One last question. I don't. In case you guys have more, I want to make sure we verify the 750 managers, technicians, people who are actively in the system. I know you guys have a lot of locations. I just want to be sure, because as we put our proposal together, that's the number we have to use. So again, requesters don't count. Somebody you send a report to look at doesn't count. It's people actively using the system to complete work, manage people, to do something. And that's the number that we'll use. Obviously, we can always add as we go along, taken away gets a little difficult, right? Based on the contract that we look at, but I just want to make sure that's we're comfortable with 750.
So Matt, part of that has to do with clinical users that are considered query users for accreditation or various different possibilities. But that would be something you'd probably want to talk to the project team after this call. We could talk about
Perfect.
that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But we should have it too. There should be two separate numbers. There should be the in-house technologists, in-house staff, and then there will be the query users, which is roughly 200 something.
I think we should, again, my suggestion, I'll talk with them, is that we start with the in-house users and maybe a certain percentage of the other ones, just to make sure, because again, don't want you to pay for things you don't need, and we want to make sure that's something they have. But we can work through the project. That's just more of a process than anything else. I'm looking out for your behalf, not mine. I guess that's the better way of putting it. I just want to make sure you're not paying for things that you don't need.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Yeah. Anything else for Derek while we got him on the line, or Mel or myself? Otherwise, we have some marching orders to get some things done for you by the 20th. And I know you guys are, some group of these are probably working through the sandbox. We want to make sure we manage that well. But if nothing else, we'll give 10 minutes back to your day.
I do see there's some questions.
I was going to say, this is great. Thanks.
there is a question. There are questions still showing up in the Q&A. Matt, do you see them?
Yeah, I've answered some of these already. So can you do a direct database connection with Tableau? But yes, we can do an integration. Obviously it has to be scoped. It's not something that's part of it. Do you allow the admins to script? Yes, again, it depends what we're wanting to script, right? Admins, our admins, a Nuvolo admin would have the ability, as long as they understand ServiceNow and how that works, to do about what you want in there, right? You're not limited. I mean, there are best practices we can help you with, of course, but yes. Are you able to, okay, I don't know about, are you able to view the environment, or will it be pointed out that it's native programs such as a PDF? I don't have that answer. Maybe, Derek, do you have that? I don't know, to be sure. Also, when the work order environment, are you able to view the attachment file within the environment, or will it be pointed out to its native program such as a PDF, or will it be open in Adobe instead? I don't know that answer.
Oh, I think it's related to, there's a question below that. In the work order environment, are you able to attach files by drag and drop? And then also, are you able to view attached files?
Once this is in there, I can go ahead and open it right from there. It will just kind of download and then I can go ahead and open that. And
yeah, we showed the drag and drop functionality. Well, we showed that functionality just a few minutes ago about how we have to get a file to there. So and as Derek says, once it's in there, then you can open up whatever it is, how it is.
Yeah, but I think the question is, and the answer is, it will open in Adobe. Like, you're not able to preview it in Nuvolo. It actually will open in its native app, which is Adobe, right?
Actually, no. So let me go ahead and share my screen really quick, because so yeah, so we have this attachment here, and so I can just select this view. It's gonna pop up into another window, but it is actually still in that environment.
Yeah, I think that was the question. I think we're used to it coming up as we're used to it coming as a separate downloaded file.
Yeah, this makes it much easier transition. That takes way less time. This way, you can quickly glance the content of the attached file rather than kind of downloading and then opening in its native program.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's actually a great feature.
Yeah. The platform, like the ServiceNow platform and Nuvolo for attachments, is actually really nice. You can keep track of all of your different attachments. You can tag them with certain items if you want to be able to report on them. So it's pretty in-depth document management. Or attachment management, rather.
So if you attach an image to an asset or to a model, would that show up if you open an asset of that model?
Yes. So let's see. I don't think there is a picture here. Let's look at this model really quickly. And so, yep, we have that picture right there.
Okay, so it would be the same. So would it be the same if it was in a work order and it was an alert attached to a model or something to that effect? Or they?
Yep, we have the ability to add in those types of fields. So like if we open up this particular record, when we are actually viewing it, we can actually see the picture, and it would appear the same on a work order, as long as it's this type of field.
Yep, thank you.
And David's got his hand up.
Yeah, for viewing documents, can you view documents on the mobile app? One of the things that Apple products have an issue with is PDFs.
Understood. So when it comes to documents like manuals and everything, you do have the ability to view them. I have not personally run into too many issues when it comes to actually viewing those documents. And I am using an iPad on this. So in my experience, there's no issue with that, and you do have the ability to.
Okay, yeah. So if you can view them as a web, then you don't have to pull them down into the device itself. That can be problematic sometimes.
Okay. Yep, that does make sense.
I'll give it 1 more minute of awkward silence, and then we can close this off. Okay. Hearing none, thank you very much, gentlemen, for the demo. Thanks, Derek. I don't see, I'll be reviewing the question and answers to see if there were any that were left over that need to be done, but otherwise it looks like we're all caught up with them. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for attending. The recording will be released shortly, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye now.